In this lesson, we learn about what services domain controllers offer. First, we learn how to read a service record. Then we learn about the services domain controllers offer via service records. And finally, we sum up our lesson with the keynotes. When reading a service record, the first field that we look at is the service. And in this case, it is the LDAP service. From the service records, we can tell that the service must be running on TCP protocol port 389. When a DNS server receives a client's query for a service record, it will check in the query to see if the client specify dc._msdcs. If so, the DNS server must respond to the client with a list of service records provided by a domain controller, and in this case, the domain controller must be in the domain it-skills.local. Upon receiving the list of service records, the client checks the priority of all service records and attempts to contact the DC with the lowest priority. So in this case, the priority is 0, which means it has the highest priority. For the list of DCs with the same priority offering the same service, the client will contact all the DCs in the list provided by the DNS server in a load balancing mechanism based on the weight. The higher the weight, the more frequent the client contacts. In this case, for domain controllers offering LDAP service with the same priority of 0 and the weight of 100, will have the same chance being contacted by the client. The domain controllers have the weight less than 100, has the less chance to provide the service, and the DC has the weight higher than 100, have a higher chance. And if the client select these records, it will contact cpvdc02.it/skills.local for LDAP service. Here we are at the DNS Manager console on cpvdc01. First, let's verify all the LDAP service records offered by domain controllers in the domain it-skills.local. Let's open the first records. As you can see, it is offered by cpvdc02.it/skills.local. Now, let's close this records and open the next one. And this service records is offered by cpvdc01.it/skills.local. Let's close this records. Now let's open the command prompt and type in nslookup. In this case, we will act as the client and query for these LDAP service records. To do that, we need to set type equal to all. And now we need to type the LDAP service records. So in this case, it is underscore LDAP dot underscore TCP dot DC dot underscore MSDCS dot it/skills.local. So we need to type all of that to see how the DNS server responds to our query. So hit enter. As you can see, the DNS server returned to the client with the two LDAP service records offered by cpvdc02.it/skills.local and cpvdc01.it/skills.local. In this case, the two domain controllers have the same priority of 0, and the same weight of 100. So they have the same chance to offer the LDAP service to the client. And as you can see, the DNS server also returned the IP address of SHIPE-VDC02 and the IP address of SHIPE-VDC01. Let's verify all Kerberos service records which enable clients to locate domain controllers that implement the Kerberos KDC service in the domain itlifeskills.local. To do that, let's open the first Kerberos records. As you can see, the Kerberos service is running on TCP protocol port 88, and in this case, it is offered by shipevdc02.itlifeskills.local. Let's close the records and open the next one. And in this case, it is offered by shipevdc01.itlifeskills.local. Let's close the records. Now we open the command prompt and type in the Kerberos records. To do that, we just need to modify this records and update it to Kerberos, then hit enter to see how the DNS server responds to the query. As you can see, the DNS server responds with the two Kerberos service records, and it serves by shipevdc02.itlifeskills.local and shipevdc01.itlifeskills.local. In this case, the two domain controllers have the same priority of 0 and the same weight of 100. So they have the same chance to offer the Kerberos service to the client. And the DNS server also returned the IP address of shipevdc02 and the IP address of shipevdc01. As you know, sites allow clients to locate the closest domain controllers. Let's open each site to verify the LDAP and Kerberos services offered in each site. To do that, we need to click on underscore sites and click on the first site, Aurora, and click on underscore TCP. As you can see, Kerberos and LDAP services are offered by SHIPE-VDC02 and SHIPE-VDC01. Now, let's click on the next site, Chicago, and click on underscore TCP, and we see the same set of records. Let's click on Elgin site and click on underscore TCP, and we also see the same set of records. The reason the Kerberos and LDAP services offered by SHIPE-VDC01 and SHIPE-VDC02 in every site because the DCs in domain itlifeskills.local only exists on one site, Chicago. Now let's click on domains, then click on the GUIs of the first domain and click on underscore TCP, and we see two LDAP service records, and they are offered by SHIPE-VDC01 and SHIPE-VDC02. These two LDAP service records enable a client to locate a domain controller in the domain itlifeskills.local on the basics of its GUI. Similarly, let's click on the next GUI and click on underscore TCP, and we see four LDAP service records, and they are offered by LHPVDC03, LHPVDC02, SHIPE-VDC11, and LPVDC01. These four LDAP service records enable a client to locate a domain controller in the domain hq.itlifeskills.local on the basics of its GUI. Please note that clients only locate a domain controller in a domain using the domain GUI. occurs only when the DNS domain name of the domain has changed. Now let's click on GC, which stands for Global Catalog. Then click on underscore TCP, and we see 4 LDAP service records. You may notice that the LDAP service records in this case is running on TCP protocol port 3268. These 4 LDAP service records enable a client to locate a global catalog server in this forest. From the server name, we can easily figure out that CPVDC01 is the global catalog server of the domain itlifeskills.local, and LHPVDC02, LHPVDC03, and OPVDC01 are the global catalog servers in the child domain hq.itlifeskills.local. Now let's click on underscore sites and click on the first site Aurora and click on underscore TCP, and we see that the global catalog server on Aurora site is OPVDC01. Now let's click on Chicago site and click on underscore TCP, and we see that the global catalog server in Chicago site is CPVDC01. Let's click on Elgin site and click on underscore TCP. We see that the global catalog server in Elgin site is LHPVDC02, which means LHPVDC03 has not been registered as a global catalog server in Elgin site. Now let's click on PDC and click on underscore TCP, and we see one LDAP service record. This LDAP service record enables a client to locate a server that is acting as the PDC emulator master of the domain. In this case, CPVDC01 is the PDC emulator master of the domain itlifeskills.local. Let's now click on underscore msdcs.itlifeskills.local, and we will see a list of CNAME records. As you may know, these are the GUIs of the directory system agent or DSA objects of each domain controller. For example, this is the DSA GUIs of the domain controller cpvdc11.hq.itlifeskills.local. As you may know, when a domain controller is renamed, then the only information that is known about the domain controller is the GUIs of the DSA's objects for the domain controller and the name of the forest the domain controller is located. So the CNAME records allow a client to locate any domain controller in the forest by looking up the A records. Let's click on itlifeskills.local domain and click on underscore TCP, and we see a list of service records for global catalog, kpros, kpassword, and LDAP services. The main difference between these service records and the ones in MSDCS is that these service records point to any servers providing the services, and these servers are not necessarily domain controllers, but the servers in MSDCS must be domain controllers. Let's click on kpassword service records, and as you can see, the kpassword service is running on TCP protocol port 464. This service records enables a client to locate a kpros password chain server for the domain, and in this case, it points to cpvdc02.itlifeskills.local. Let's click on itlifeskills.local domain and we see a list of A records for the servers providing global catalog, kpros, kpassword, and LDAP services for the domain itlifeskills.local. Now let's click on hq.itlifeskills.local domain and we also see a list of A records for the server providing global catalog, kpros, kpassword, and LDAP services for hq.itlifeskills.local domain. That is the reason why DNS servers can provide names along with IP addresses of the servers providing these services to the clients. This is the end of this lesson. Let's read the keynotes.